on into session 2, charting the journey. So we're going to talk about how Americans find reliable moving companies. And to do that, I've got a wonderful panel here with me, our own marketing maestros who get to work with moving companies and do this every single day. So I'll kick it off by introducing myself. My name is Arby. I'm the VP of Marketing at Supermove. And with me, I have Michelle Cordero, who is the head of social media marketing at JK Moving. I've got Marcus Henning, who is the founder and CTO of Mover Marketing AI, who also happens to be a owner-operator himself. And finally, Rachael Fischer, who's the CEO of Next Destination Marketing, who herself has run marketing at Moving Company in past years. So we're still trying to get Rachael on. But in the meantime, Marcus, Michelle, I'd love for you to introduce yourselves a little bit more about what you do.
Michelle, you can go first.
Great, thanks. Yes, so Michelle Cordero with JK Moving. I'm relatively new to the moving industry. Joined JK almost exactly a year ago. But love social media and have been able to easily translate the different type of contents that I work with into the moving industry. And in some cases, I think that's worked to our advantage, providing a new perspective on what movers typically do on social media.
Thank you. Welcome.
Marcus Henning. I started my moving company about 12 years ago and really enjoyed it and just found myself more focused on the marketing and sales aspect of it. So about 5 years into owning my company, I put the systems and procedures in place to step away from the business and just focus purely on marketing. And now I'm just really happy to help other companies with their marketing and sales and systems and processes and stuff like that.
Very cool, doing 2 things at once. Welcome, Marcus.
Thanks.
Rachel, we got you on now. Welcome.
Yeah, here. Hi. Yeah, I'm Rachael Fischer Lyons. I have about 15 years experience in the moving and storage industry. I used to be the leader of the marketing department for Olympia Moving and Storage. They're a Wheaton agent, and I was with them for about 10 years. And during that time, I quadrupled the size of their business, with their team, and ended up really loving it. So about 3 years ago, I left that job to start my own marketing business so I could help do the same thing for other movers, because as I like to say, once you're in moving, you're in it for life. So here I am.
That's awesome. Well, thank you all for joining. Before we dive into the actual data, I just wanted to ask, what's been the best part of your job today? Or if you have an example from the past you want to share as well. What's the best part of your job being marketing for moving?
Yeah, I'll
Yeah, go for it.
Sure. So I think that the thing I love about marketing for moving specifically is that it's a really underserved market in terms of marketing. And I think that a struggle with that is people have a perception of what moving is, and they think it's very simple, when in reality, behind the scenes, I think it's a lot more complicated. So it's really great to be able to work with people, and when you talk to them and realize that you get it and you're on the same page and you understand what moves the needle in their business. So just being able to niche down has been one of my favorite parts of working with movers specifically.
That's awesome. Agreed. Marcus?
Yeah, so I really like Rachel said, the ability to find solutions that really leverage the outcomes with just small changes. That a lot of times when someone starts a moving company, they work day to day into it and they work through all the stresses and everything about the business. Sometimes they lose sight of other things that they're missing out on, and being able to give an outside perspective that makes dramatic changes to their business is what I get excited about.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Michelle?
for me, it's been the people. Like I said, I'm somewhat new to the moving industry, having only been in for a year. And I was actually on Capitol Hill working in a totally different industry before this. And it's just been such a fresh, it's just the people. It's the people, everything. They're smart, they're kind, they're real, they're hardworking. It's just very different from the environments that I've been around in the past. And so the people are definitely my favorite part.
Couldn't have said it better. Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining. I think we can now dive in and get right to the juice. So we'll kick off with one of the pieces of data that we got from our survey, which is when people actually start planning their move. So when we asked Americans who are planning to move in the next 2 years, how far in advance they typically start planning, which means like start searching for a moving company, 79% of them said within 3 months of their move, of which almost half, so half of that 79%, are within 1 month. So really coming down to that final stretch, right? So, should you care about when your customers start planning their move, and how do you think about it? How do you incorporate that into your marketing strategy? Because the way I see it is like there's a brand awareness and then there's the lead acquisition part. But how do you all think about it? Have you incorporated that into your strategy? Marcus, you want to start us off?
Yeah, definitely. So for the brand awareness, that's basically the step where there's something that's getting them ready to move, like they're selling their house and they show up on MLS, whatever the case is. And then that's the time where you can't be too intrusive, in my opinion. You can just be brand awareness. You can get in front of them in, emails, postcards, banner ads, stuff like that. And it's, looking at the data side here, I get really excited about it because knowing that these are the reasons people are moving, I'm going to put 3 different ads that are just going to rotate. So one of my 10 ads that I hit them with will be more close to what they're thinking about with their move, whether it's, downsizing or affordability. So I really like, the ability. Can you go with the question? Because I got a little distracted.
No, it was just like, how do you incorporate knowing when people actually start their move? And we know that majority of them start within a month to 3 months.
Yeah.
How do
So, there's data side like USA Home Listings that can provide you information about people moving, lead gen, stuff like that.
Thank you. Rachel, how about you? How do you separate the two and how do you use that timeline?
Yeah, I think when movers see that people are planning their move with like 1 month or less, like advance notice, I think that gives them like a small heart attack. Like I know that it does for me. I think it's really concerning for like especially if you're a full service mover, if you're like a higher end mover, I think that a shorter timeline to plan is extremely concerning because I think that in order to market to those people, I think you need more time because first of all, people are going to budget more for the move if they're going to be planning it earlier. Usually like the move is at the end of the transaction, like they've already spent like all this money, like marketing and listing their home and everything else associated with the relocation. And then they're like, oh yeah, I have to move and I have, $600 left, right? And that's really not going to work for a lot of the movers in the market. So you really have to get in there earlier. They also need more time to like understand the difference, research movers, prepare for the move. So if we want to have that larger timeline, we should definitely be starting the marketing process at the time of listing. But I think you even have to go even to the time of pre-listing. You have to start targeting them there. So like, how do you do that? And that's why I think that a lot of movers need to focus on marketing to their relationships. The people like the listing agents, they're going to know about these customers before they are even, you know, listing the property. And they need to think about that when they're planning their marketing content because they need marketing content that is going to be planning that pre-listing process, the staging process, all that, so that we can be capturing those customers earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. I always think of it as like you want to start marketing before your customer even has that need, right? But then you want to be discoverable when they come looking for you, right?
100%.
Speaking about, marketing, before your customer even has that need, I think that's where social media plays a great role. So Michelle, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was going to come at it from a social perspective. It makes a lot of sense, Rachel, what you just said, because coming at it and what you said, when you look at it from a social perspective, really that brand awareness and lead acquisition, that sort of infinity loop is achieved at the same time. Everything that we do on social at JK is created with the intention that our viewer could be a potential customer now or later. So for example, if you're putting out one piece of content, let's say a reel, for example, that's 3 things you should know before you move, you're going to establish that the voice of an authority You're going to have the brand awareness with your truck footage in the background. And then you're going to want to do this a lot because people, have to see your brand upwards of 7 times before they're going to remember you. So the more you do this, the better. And then at the same time, you could be speaking directly to a potential customer with this video who may be indeed planning to move at that time. And here's where it gets even more interesting is through social, you could include things like DM automation, where you just tell them to drop a comment like move if you're moving, and then that's all they have to do, and then boom, they're on your website. So that's how that infinity loop kind of works all as one together on social.
That's very cool. That's really cool. I mean, we're talking about being consistent. Is there like a benchmark you'd set or you recommend? I know some of us like, how many times do I post on social media? Like, what do I post on social media, right?
Yeah, so if you had asked me last year, I would have said post at least once every day. But I think what's more important is that you post what works. I would suggest that everyone take a look at their content and give it an audit. What's working for you? What's not working for you? Don't spin your wheels on the content that's not driving views or likes or clicks, and spend more time being more intentional and taking more time to create the content that is working.
Absolutely. In terms of lead acquisition, we talked about building that brand there, but in terms of lead acquisition, did any of you have any tips on something you can do now to like acquire any customers in your area who may be looking? Like I think of one as an example of always tapping into your existing customer base and think about all those, for example, like all of your rental tenants who moved with you last year, right? Set up an automation to email them 10 months after to be like, hey, are you going to renew? Like, if you ever need to move again, we'd love to move you, and just like set that up, get in front of them when they're probably thinking about moving again. But that's one idea I think of. Do you have any ideas or things that you've done in the past that have been really great?
I've always based most of my marketing strategies for movers around driving referrals. So customer referrals, like you mentioned, that's like a huge piece of it, of course. But the referrals from the other people in the transaction, I think that's honestly, I think where you want to focus more of your efforts, because those people are going to know, dozens, maybe even hundreds of people who are going to be moving every year versus marketing directly to a customer who's going to, move once every 7 years, maybe, I think is like the general statistic, right? So, and again, that's going to get you earlier in the process as well. So making relationships with, people who are like building managers, real estate agents, HOAs, things like that, who are going to be able to drive those leads to you. That's always been like the basis, I think, of a lot of my strategy.
Cool. I think we'll move on to the next insight then. So when we asked Americans, where do you go to find a moving company? No surprise, the number one answer was Google search. And, I really don't think that surprised any of us here on the panel or anyone listening in. But it's why we invest in Google business pages and getting more reviews and, doing all that optimization. Second to search is word of mouth. So half of Americans said that they ask family and friends. Is this reflected in your strategy today? And if it is, I would love if each of you can provide one hot tip for everybody here about how you can maximize word of mouth or search. Like, what would that be?
Yeah, so Google search is definitely 100% part of our strategy. Maintaining a strong social search is a critical part of customer acquisition. But the hot tip to increase the word of mouth obviously is exceptional service. Happy customers talk to other people about their moves and share your business. So making sure that your customers are happy.
I love that.
Yeah, make sure they're happy, and then also don't forget about them, and don't let them forget about you. You don't have to constantly blow them up with all these different marketing things, but like remind them who you are, because some people forget who moved them a year ago. So if you haven't spoken to them in a year, make sure you're doing a little more consistent about that, and just ask your customers that are coming in if who was your last mover. And I've done that, and I know that they say I have no idea. So like that's the reason they're calling you, because they don't know who moved them last time, whether it was good or bad. So just don't let them forget about you.
Marcus, that's a really good point. Don't let them forget about you. How can people do that today? Easily.
Drip campaigns, just very small touches. You can go into your social media and retarget your customers. You know, not a bunch, just a little bit. Like maybe have them, like if you can instill a way for them to want to comment about their experience, things like that.
Yeah, agreed. Drip campaigns, for anyone who doesn't know, is like email, like automating how many times you reach out with an email. Definitely. And obviously you don't want to overdo it, but just do it at the right cadence so that it's valuable.
Yeah,
You
don't wind up in spam.
Absolutely. Rachel?
Yeah, I mean, the other tips were more on the referral side, so I'll head up the search side. I think that a mistake that people make a lot in search is they go a little too broad and just realizing that they need to be extremely specific in how they're targeting their search terms. So, like if you, for example, I know, Michelle, I believe you're probably based in DC, in the DC area, right? So I think like a lot of folks will say, okay, I need to like rank for Washington, DC movers. And yeah, that is super important and you should really strive for that. But don't forget about, you know, the other search terms that people are searching for, like, you know, the Falls Church movers, the Alexandria movers, the movers that also have storage, the movers that also pack, you know, things like that. I think that people focus too much on the, you know, the bigger search terms when sometimes it's much easier to rank and convert people on those, you know, longer, more specific search terms as well. So keep that in mind with the search strategy.
That's a good point. And we'll talk about other services as well in other sessions here today. But I want to dive a little bit into that before we go on is search. There's two ways of approaching it, right? There's organic search, which is where the SEO and making sure that you're showing up. And then there's paid search. So do any of you have recommendations on, you know, do you need paid and how you'd approach paid if you have a limited budget or you have obviously a larger budget? Like where would you prioritize the funds if you wanted to dive into paid and try it out?
Well, I will say that if you're gonna do major paid ads and you don't have a lot of budget, there's certain times of the year and certain times of the like economy that it gets much worse. Overall, I believe from the last information I've seen, there's about like a 33% loss in traffic for people moving, trying to find movers. And so what's happening is as moving companies have less traffic coming in, more people are focusing on PPC ads. So that means Google has less supply and there's a lot more demand. So that might not be an area of focus if you don't have a lot of budget, but I would always test it. Just continue to test it. Don't do something once and think that that's it. Maybe try again in 3 months, try again in 6 months, whatever you can do, but don't just give up because there's a lot of moving companies killing it in those avenues.
Great advice. Yeah. And I think just like start with, if you wanted to start, you'd start with low hanging fruit, like Rachel just said, for those specific location specific, time period specific, that you know they have intention to move. They are looking for someone like you. Those are the type of keywords I would put any, you know, beginning budget towards paid search for sure. Cool. Going back to this chart, I think we've, you know, going beyond the two obvious channels of Google search and referrals, we see social media takes third place, right? And it's kind of fun to see the generational trends, which kind of shape which channels dominate. So we see that, first of all, everybody's, you know, relying on Facebook to find movers. Probably no surprise. But then you see like Gen Z and millennials kind of start peaking. They're the most significant generation to say TikTok. So not that we all should be on, not everyone should be on TikTok, but I think I'll start with you, Michelle, because it's like, how do you leverage demographic insights to drive your social strategy or your customer insights to drive your social strategy?
Yeah, so JK's customer base tends to skew older. So predominantly our base would be on Facebook, but I think I don't know, maybe it is, but I don't think that it's a secret that Facebook is driving a significant less amount of traffic than it used to. And it's becoming more of a place where people connect with their friends and their family and less with brands. So JK's shifted our focus to engaging in Facebook groups and communities and put a lot more energy into Instagram.
Nice. And so you're seeing a growing shift in Instagram. I think we can really bucket Facebook and Instagram because they're owned by the same company now.
Yeah, and Instagram actually has about 100 million more downloads than in the App Store than Facebook does. So it's kind of taken off in popularity.
Cool. Marcus, Rachel, do you have any tidbits to add on social there?
Yeah. I think that something that movers make a mistake on sometimes with social is realizing that different channels are for different people and like what your strategy is depends on who you're targeting, right? So I think like if you want to be driving direct leads through social, first of all, that's going to take a lot of effort and a lot of content. I don't think people like realize how much content you have to put out there in order to get like a lot of reach, like through those channels, right? So that's really where you're going to be wanting to focus your energies the way that Michelle was talking about, on Instagram, on Facebook. And yeah, you know what? TikTok too. Like I'm on TikTok and I'm in my 30s, so it's happening. So but I think that also don't forget that social is also huge for business to business and referral based marketing as well, right? And that's where you really want to be focusing your energies on LinkedIn, on Facebook and Instagram, but probably more primarily in LinkedIn, but like the other, those other channels, your B2B contacts are on there too. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh, okay, I'm going to put this post with like packing tips, right? Well, that's going to be really good if you are doing a B2C strategy, but like don't put that post over on your LinkedIn page, for example, because that's not relevant to that audience. What you need to be talking about there is, hey, like this is how we can help your corporate clients. This is how we can, drive, help you with your commercial projects, things like that. So just think carefully about who is on each channel and what is valuable to them and who are you trying to target.
Yeah, with social media, what I like to do mostly for is besides the brand awareness up front, but when they actually come in and get a quote from the moving company, that's when we like to hit them with like the social proof and like reassurance that we're a real legit company. And like so then scrolling through and they're like, hey, I got a quote from them. They look super friendly, always smiling, always taking good care of their customers. Those type of things, just to help warm up those leads if they haven't converted yet.
100% Marcus. I say that all the time. It's like the trust signals are in your
Yeah,
social media.
absolutely.
Absolutely. I think that's it's all a great point. Like if you have larger resources and a heavier budget, then yes, you can really cater each channel for each of your audiences. But if you're smaller and you just want to get started, pick one channel that focus on your audience and dominate. Give the best content, do it consistently at whatever, that's twice a week or daily, whatever that number is to you, but be valuable and create something that you think that is really going to resonate. Michelle, we actually have a question from the audience for you, so I thought I'd ask it out loud live. I've noticed that JK uses Reels heavily in social. Do you get any pushback from your team on the freedom to create those, especially if those are more TikTok formatted?
I don't actually, which is another reason that I love my job. When JK brought me aboard, they really wanted to expand their reach and let me kind of take the creative reins and do what I needed to do there. And sometimes you have to do things that push the envelope a little bit. You might not always think that Jay-Z represents your brand perfectly, but that audio is trending and that's going to work for that time. There's a method behind the madness, and luckily JK is business savvy enough to know that that's how you reach that audience on that platform.
That's awesome. It's a great reason to love your job. One final question. What tips and tricks do you have for LinkedIn for reaching out to people and connecting with them without being those people who connect and instantly pitch, right? They want to connect realtors, property managers, facility admin, etc. Anyone want to take that?
Sure. I always say with LinkedIn, start with like your real relationships and then grow it out from there, right? So if you're trying to connect, it says realtors, property managers, assisted living, right? So connect with your real relationships in those segments, the people that you know in person, you've met in person, your current clients, things like that. And then start posting content that is related to those niches. And basically, the way LinkedIn works is like if someone engages with something, then it's more likely that like their network will see your post, right? So basically what you want to do is just get the support of your real, quote unquote, real, friends over on LinkedIn. And as they engage, with your content, then it's going to start pushing your content out to people who don't know you in real life, and then they'll start coming to you. So
Yeah, agreed. And even like responding or engaging with their content, what they're posting before you're
100%.
for any of their
Yeah.
time. Like, are you even engaging with what they're putting to say? Are you giving them some value, some insights? You want to comment, give them some advice before connecting? I think that always helps before just direct pitches on social media.
So one of the things that we do, and we try to have our clients do too, is every 5-star review that you get is an opportunity to share with a realtor that sold them the house. So if you find them on LinkedIn or you find their email or wherever, it's a good reason to talk to them and just say, hey, I just want to let you know I moved a mutual client. They had a great experience. I'm here to help in the future community thing. And that could be email, could be LinkedIn, however you choose. But I always like to have something to bring to the table, not just a cold. Realtors get hit up all the time, so don't do that.
That's a great tip, actually, for sure. All right, we only got like less than 5 minutes, so we're gonna wrap this up on our last final insight is that we asked Americans what makes them willing to pay more for one moving company over another. Now, there were a lot of answers, but for this session, we were only going to primarily focus on the answers that we believe marketing can control and influence, which was 36% reviews and ratings, 32% recommendations from family and friends, 27% said well-known brand, 21% said online presence matters. So what's your take on this? I mean, that 20 to 30 something percent, that's not the vast majority, but it's also not an insignificant amount. It could be your differentiator. So I would love to know like how, I mean, how do you use this as differentiators currently with, in what you do?
Yeah, so from a social perspective, obviously, yes, brand and reputation 100% sets you apart. I think JK is a good brand to speak on this. And from a social media perspective, a tactic that I think that can really help you in this area, if you can afford to do so, would be working with an influencer and influencer marketing. It's a quick way to work with someone who has hundreds of thousands of followers who trust their recommendation, so that it instantly gives you that like brand credibility. And then it also helps you build a stronger brand awareness at the same time. JK recently has worked with 2 influencers in the past year, and there's a lot to learn. You don't want to just dive right in, but if your campaign is executed correctly, there can be great benefits. It lives as like a living, breathing testimony that continues to, keep giving. It broadens your audience, not just by numbers, but also by demographics. If you work with someone whose audience is generally someone that you don't typically get to follow you, for us, that was women. We didn't have a lot of women that followed us. JK was a brand that a lot of men followed, but we worked with a female influencer, and boom, all of a sudden, Lindsay S is commenting on all of our posts. And then I would argue that in 2024, influencer marketing should be part of a healthy content strategy for almost every brand. It's kind of the new thing that you need to be doing in your advertising, and you should try it out.
That's awesome. Even like realtor influencers in your area.
Absolutely.
So to Rachel and Marcus, like, how do you approach building that brand and trust? I think trust is like that commonality in all those, trust and reputation. How do you approach building that when you're a small mover that operates in, 1 or 2 cities versus being a larger franchisor? Like, do
yeah,
you look at it different?
totally. Yeah, I mean, it's about sending out as many trust signals as you possibly can, right? So, like, everything that you do from a marketing standpoint needs to be like, how is this establishing trust? So, I think, from a, having like a website, for example, that presents itself like really well visually, I think a lot of people like will look at a website and that will literally determine like whether or not they think that it's going to be a trustworthy mover. So, I mean, that's one investment I think that would really pay off, for example. And then I think reviews are just as important as ever. I think the good news too the is that the channels are easier, I think, than they were like maybe 5, 10 years ago. So really just focusing only like on Google reviews, I think would pay off really big for a lot of brands. And then driving referrals, right? Because that's still one of the strongest trust signals is like an actual person saying, I had a personal experience with this brand and it was good. So I think just looking at those three categories, really two categories. How am I presenting myself so that people find me trustworthy? And then how am I getting people to tell other people, whether through reviews or in person, that I am trustworthy?
Yeah, I would say just make sure that you're not giving any red flags off. You know, people are just browsing through it and they might not like look at everything, but they are. It's more of their fast thinking, like their system one thinking versus system two thinking. So make sure you're doing all these things. And if you don't know if you have a good brand or not, just ask someone. They'll tell you. You know, if don't ask your mom, ask someone that will tell you honestly, but just ask a couple people and make sure that they go through the customer experience and what their feedback is. It's a really easy process to go through. You know, make sure that you have real pictures, you have uniforms. Everybody knows what it takes to be professional, so it shouldn't be too difficult to pull that off. Just gotta ask.
100%. Such simple things can make such a really big impact. Well, I know we're really at time, so I want to thank the three of you for hopping on. I think we could talk for a much longer time, but thank you for hopping on. We're gonna move over to session 3. So we're gonna take a quick 1-minute break, and I'll have Ryan Marsh, our next moderator and host, take it on from here.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.